This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Thank you for joining us for August Balance of State HMIS users meeting. Very excited to have you. I'm going to go through just a couple things here. Our agenda today is there's just a few updates, relatively short, and then some feedback around some reporting. So for system updates, there's been a change in the system around Alt ID. I want to review with you. We've got some more updates around the ESG CV CAPER, and annual privacy trainings are coming up. So we want to prep you on that. And then there was just a little note from HUD about the census we want to advise you on. For our how we can help section, we're going to share some new information around the longitudinal system analysis report and some prep work that we can do in planning for this fall. And then, of course, we'll look at some deadlines and timelines for what's next. Okay, so I think everyone is muted, and would like to reduce, background noise. So please monitor that for yourself as well. We'll definitely, unmute for some Q&A pauses, and the chat box is really available. With Andy and me working together, one of us can check the chat box throughout the meeting. So that's a great way to ask some questions or get some clarification or potentially vote. Just priming you for that later. Okay, and please, if you could kind of sign in, so to speak, make sure that your name is in the settings here. You can edit your name by going to that people list, clicking on your row there, and editing that name. So, love to see who we're actually talking to when we're answering questions and whatnot. All right, so we're ready to get into the system update. Andy, stop me if there's some questions before we go ahead.
We can move on ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so the first update here is that alternate ID has been added to our system. Now, this is added specifically for NC Care 360 identification numbers. I really want to emphasize that this is only for NC Care 360 numbers. And so that is going to be seen on the client profile. You see Han Solo here as our example in HMIS, and there's a new row on that client record section that says client ID. And so here his client ID for HMIS is 4. That's what pops up. That's what's initially visible. And you actually have to click the magnifying glass in order to get a pop-up to show alternate client ID. Again, this is only used for NC Care 360 IDs. So if you're not connecting profiles, then there's no need to. All right, I'm getting some feedback noise. Just gonna mute some of our folks. Okay. Please mute yourself for background noise if possible. All right, so alternate ID is here. This is where you'll put in that unique ID from NC Care 360. And that's it. You save, and then you get a little magnifying glass with the number 1 there. So when you're perusing HMIS, you're looking at clients, you may see the magnifying glass that either has a number or doesn't. That should just refer to an NC Care 360 ID. All right, any questions there? Okay, great, so that little change is good. Okay, moving on. We've been learning a little bit more about the ESG CV reporting, and that's the ESG CV CAPER. So that report is still under development, still waiting on some specifications to know exactly what will be in that report, but we know quite a bit. We now have dates. Just as a reminder, this report is going to deduplicate clients across all of you agencies. So we're going to submit for the whole HMIS implementation from Balance of State, Durham, and Orange, and deduplicate between project types. So basically it means we're going to be pulling a lot of data, actually quarterly, and submitting that for ESG CV grantee or subgrantees. So that's one reason why it's really important for you to communicate with us about what projects have been funded through at least this first tranche of ESG CV, right? Whether that's shelter or back at home rehousing, please definitely communicate actively with us about what that looks like. And thanks so much for those of you that have been kind of bouncing around with questions. It really helps us prepare for this reporting and set up your project accurately. So again, this is going to be a quarterly report, and the first deadline has been confirmed by HUD as October 30th. So that's going to pull data from whenever ESG CV clients started being served, and that'll differ by program, through September 30th, and then we have to submit that by the end of October. Now, when I say we have to submit that, remember that you are not going to be pulling this report specifically for submission to HUD. Andy and I at the data center as sysadmins are going to pull that information. So you can help us prepare. You're responsible for your data being accurate, complete, timely, all of that good stuff. But just know that you're not responsible for the submission of this report. Okay, we do expect it to be pretty similar to the current ESG CAPER, and the current ESG CAPER is a really good way to monitor your data until the new report comes out. So run that report at least monthly, but we highly recommend weekly for your project. Okay, any questions around ESG CV reporting and that configuration? You can unmute yourself on the phone with *6 or chat in the chat box. We've had a little bit of background noise today, so I'm a little cautious about just unmuting us all. Okay, and we've got some good planning for annual privacy trainings. I'm going to turn it over to Andy for that.
All righty, appreciate that, Andrea. All right, so let's talk about annual privacy trainings, why we're doing them, and then the process to do them. So for those of you who've been with the system for a little bit of time, we used to do this on the date that you got your license. And those of you who are newer in the system in the last year and a half, we haven't done anything with this yet. So this year, we're going to do it all in 1 month. So the why is because we just want to renew your HMIS knowledge about privacy. We want to make sure that everyone's on the same page about how to best put their client in HMIS and secure their information, right? Think about it from your perspective. If you are being put into HMIS, you want to make sure that the people handling your information are doing it in the best way and safest way possible. So renewing that knowledge, because it's also a HUD requirement. So HUD also wants us to be on par and up on our game in terms of the privacy and just reminding ourselves what is and what isn't a good practice when working with clients. So that's the why. Renew our information because it's a HUD requirement. So then how do we do this and when do we do this? The how, so the quiz is going to be available starting September 1st. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so we can just mute our lines. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so the quiz is going to be available starting on September 1st until September 29th. So we're going to send out a big email blast with all the information and the links and everything starting on the 1st. So you don't have to go searching for it anywhere. We're going to send it right to your inbox. And what's going to be required of everybody is rewatching the privacy video and then taking the quiz. So the video is about 30 minutes in length. And then the quiz, depending on your test taking style, should take about 10 to 15 minutes. You do have multiple chances to retake the quiz, and we get notification whenever a quiz is completed. Once you watch the video and take the quiz and you pass, we'll get notification, we'll check you off the list, and then you're done. So that's about an hour of your time altogether. Hopefully you'll be able to schedule that out on your calendar within that month. And I'm seeing a question in the chat. Yeah, so the information can be sent to all licensed holders, not just the agency admin. So that's a great question. Usually we send that information just to the admins, but because this is everybody, we're just sending that out. So that last point there, these quizzes, because it's a requirement and because it's a renewal of your knowledge, you need to complete this in order to maintain your HMIS license. For whatever reason, you forgot, you lost the email, you didn't have time. If we don't get that email that says you passed the quiz by the 29th, we're going to inactivate your license. So if you still need it, please reach out to us, let us know. It just requires watching the video and taking the quiz, and then we can reactivate your license. So we have the whole month of September. So hopefully everyone's schedule is very busy. So that hour of time, you can carve that out and knock it out as soon as possible. Yeah, if you have any other questions or if you missed the deadline and still need the license, let us know, and we can work on something together there. Alrighty, and I should have control, Andrea, so I can move us to the next slide. In theory, sorry, we're trying a new way to share the screen here.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, fantastic. Okay, and so I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions about the privacy training or what's involved with that before we move forward? Okay. Another thing that we've been doing behind the scenes here is updating Zendesk. So for the longest time, emails and tickets from Zendesk would come in as like separate emails, and you would have to search through your inbox in order to kind of keep up the thread. We have fixed that now. So there were some back-end pieces that we needed to adjust, and now it should just act like a regular email. It will still kind of have the formatting of Zendesk with like the ticket ID and everything, but it should just be one continuous chain. Let us know if you're not seeing that. There may be some pieces that we still need to troubleshoot, yeah, that should be one big email chain now, like every other email that you've received. So if not, let us know, hmis@ncceh.org. All right. So Andrea, we'll talk about.
So I just wanted to make sure that that all of you are ready and prepared for some communication from the Census Bureau. There is an email which has hyperlinks here that'll be live in the PDF slides that I'll post today. Just about some contacts that you may get from the Census Bureau for client interviews, for supportive services only, street outreach, emergency shelter, and transitional housing projects. They're trying to do some more in-depth interviews with folks experiencing homelessness and participating in these projects in late September to kind of open up their sample size and analysis. So it's important that the wider community, nationally and statewide, understands where clients are coming from, and hopefully these interviews will help illuminate that for everyone. So we've got more sources of data and analysis to support our clients. So just wanted to give you a heads up there that you may be receiving that communication. All right. Awesome. So how can we help? We want to prepare y'all for some additional federal reporting seasons and activities. So I'm going to give it back to Andy here for the LSA, Longitudinal System Analysis.
All righty. And okay, great. LSA was the AHAR. Those of you who've been here for a while, the AHAR was kind of just an overall checkup of the system, kind of see how it's doing, how the projects were set up. That's now called the LSA. So this year, we're going to be submitting fiscal year 19 and 20 together. 19, we have cleaned up previously. So with everyone's hard work with the SPMs, we're going to review those, but there shouldn't be a whole lot to do from 2019. But for 2020, so just going down the list here, so the prep work and data cleanup is going to be starting in early September and going to early November. So that involves a few different pieces. The September start date is from WellSky, essentially. So they're working on the reports that HUD's requiring them to have. They're making sure that those are up to date with the new data standards and all the different pieces there. So we're going to have access to those hopefully within the first 2 weeks of September. But early September to WellSky can sometimes mean some different things. So again, we'll be updating you as we know. But then between October and November, that's when we'll be reaching out to everybody as needed. So a lot of this work is information on the back end, some bed and unit inventories, and some more technical pieces about how HUD categorizes your project. So we'll be reaching out with guides and specific instructions as we need. But from October to November, we're going to be doing that cleanup work, largely on our end, and then we'll reach out as we need. So the submission, I'm sorry. Yeah, so the submission follow-up with HUD, we want to make sure everything is as clean as possible, right? We want to make sure that we've done our dress rehearsal and we're ready for the audience to come in. So from November to December, HUD will be talking with the data center largely, and we may be reaching out for more clarification, but HUD does their own sort of cleanup in their way. So October to November, that's when we'll be reaching out to you all, and then November to December will be a few more points of contact, but we'll be working on it from there. Also during this time, because everyone loves to have multiple things to do, right? Because we don't have enough to do, and we just want to make sure our plates are really full. We're going to be starting the SPM work as well. So that's the system performance measure, another kind of wellness check for the system, but that's a lot more client-based and talking about length of stay in project, people's exits to permanent housing, so on and so forth. So that's going to be a lot more involved with you, the users, agency admins, basic users, everybody can help out with this. But It's due in March. We're going to be starting work in October or November with that, just to make sure we are doing as much as we can before we get to Pit Hick, because all of those lovely reporting seasons just keep on happening one after the other. So we just want to make sure we're starting early enough. Again, we'll let you know as we know with the SPMs as those are coming out. So any questions about the timeline or what that may involve for you all?
And I think Andy said this as well. Like we'll be giving more information and more details as we get closer to some of these dates in September, October, including more details about what is really pulled into the LSA, what's pulled into system performance measures. But we wanted to give you a heads up as soon as we heard these dates.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully this helps for your own internal calendars as well.
All right. Okay, so perfect. Alrighty, so Andrea foreshadowed it. We're going to do a little bit of voting here. So if you're agency admin, that basic end user, if you're on this call, you get a vote. So we want your feedback about how we are giving you reporting corrections. So before we start the reporting season, we've tried a few different methods, especially last year, in getting you that information in smaller chunks, where previously we were giving it all at once. So let me go over the two options and then we will vote. So the first correction set is that we just give you one big list, right? We, as soon as we're able to run all the reports or have all the pieces, we put that all in one big Excel file, send it off to you with instructions, of course, and a guide to make those corrections. So the pro there, right, you get the full scope of what's going on. There'll be different categories on the same sheet, but sometimes the information about the client will duplicate, so you can take care of a lot of issues all at once if it's the same client. And there's one due date as well. So it may be a shorter turnaround, like 3-4 weeks, but you have all that information right then and there. But a con, right, is that it's a big list as well. So dedicating that time, finding time to like look through it and chunk it out, that can take its own setup and prep time. But then there's also not a guarantee that that list is it, right? We get updates sometimes in the last month, in the last weeks, sometimes from the software vendor with updates to the reports that are pulling in issues that I mean, you all have found when you're working in the data. So option one is one big list with subsequent lists that come as needed from the vendor. So the second version that we tried with the SPMs this year is multiple waves. So what that means is just multiple smaller lists that come to you. So when we set the SPMs up this last year, we said, hey, like this is going to be part one of however many that we thought were coming. And that was because WellSky wasn't giving us, they weren't updating the reports all at once, they're doing it piecemeal. So instead of waiting and kind of shrinking that clock, we sent out smaller lists that we hope were easier to manage and easier to make corrections on. So while there may be 3 or 4 emails and a shorter time frame to correct those, it's also a shorter list. So you're only looking at one like length of stay issue, or you're only looking at social security numbers. It's usually going to be a shorter amount of information to walk through. And it also lets us do this break down like the big project, the big paper that's due at the end of the semester into bite-sized pieces. The con is that we start earlier, so sometimes if you're not in that mindset, that can throw people off. But there are also more due dates and points to track and to meet, but it's also giving you that information in smaller chunks. So with those two options, I would like everybody and anybody, so whatever your personal preference is. So if you like one, that you get all the lists. Where's my camera? There we go. Type in 1 for corrections all at once, or a 2 for corrections in waves. Fantastic. Okay. So seeing a fair amount of 2s coming in, some 1s as well. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Andrea.
Now I can't seem to get the pen off, but hopefully this is helpful.
Just be maybe drawing on the rest of the sheet. Our preference is the user's preference. I know that's not exactly an answer, but whatever makes the most sense and is easier for you all to work with and turn around with, we want to do that for everybody there. Okay. Alrighty, so we'll have a look at these more closely after the meeting as well, but it seems like the majority is looking at the multiple waves. So what I'm thinking right now is we will start off with that method. So have those multiple waves, so a smaller list. And as we're doing that, if you want us to hold those lists together and then give them to you at one point, we can do that as well. But yeah, this is great feedback. I appreciate it, everybody. Yeah, whatever works best with everybody. All right.
All right. So I think we're ready to go on. Is that right, Andy?
Yes.
Okay. So I see Jeff, you wrote in, dang. Maybe you didn't like that multiple wave preference, which I hear you. There's a way to avoid getting these lists as well. You can correct the data ahead of time, right? You can actually get through a lot of these corrections for both the longitudinal system analysis and system performance measures by looking at your data right now with the APR and the CAPA report. And so you can actually run those for the multiple years that can pull in. Hopefully there's not a lot going on with those 2017 to 2018 years that really focus in on our fiscal year 2020, which is that third date, the October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020. You can run your reports now for that, well, and of course through September. And look for M6 errors. That's going to give you a huge leg up in this process and allow you to focus on either the trickier troubleshooting issues or on the rest of your positions, right? We can help identify some things from the system level. There's definitely some things that you might not be able to see, but this is a great way to get a head start. And apologies, Jeff, if I misunderstood your comment there. No worries. All right, and then remember that if you don't know what I'm talking about and how to run the APR or the caper with these dates, we've got the guide for how to run and how to read the APR and caper on our website. I've kind of put the breadcrumbs there, the steps you can use to get to those guides at the bottom. The other thing I want to mention is when I say right now, we can do it right now. If you want to hold on at the end and ask some questions about troubleshooting these reports now, I can stay on after our call, and we can run through some reports, even demo these reports, and kind of look at how to troubleshoot some different options with the aggregate non-identified information. So happy to do that as well. If you want to chat in that you want to stay on, that's great. Any other questions around what you can do now, take control of your data, or how we're preparing for these reports? Okay, great. All right, so we do want to also give you a heads up for what's next and some deadlines. I want to reiterate. So coming up, we've got an October deadline. The first quarterly ESG coronavirus reports are due. It's true that we don't have that report yet, but they will be due in October. In November, we've got our deadline for 2 reporting years of the LSA, fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. And then December, we may have some additional kind of sub-deadlines with HUD communicating with the data center and COCs. January is our annual pit night, where we're going to look at inventory and the folks they're serving. And then system performance measures are due in March. So that is a big look at what the kind of next few months looks like for federal HMIS reporting deadline. And I know that integrates with a lot of other things going on. All right, well, those are the updates for today. I want to see if there's any other questions, either about what we covered or anything else HMIS on your mind. We've got a question in the chat about privacy training. Thanks, Carrington. So if someone just got their license this week, do they have to take the training again in September? Andy, can you answer about the cutoff time?
Yes, and yes, they do. That is kind of a pitfall of the design here, that if they just took it, we have a cutoff like right before on the 24th. So if you had your license on or before that date, you do have to retake it. But hopefully it will be real easy to take since you just review the video, and you can take the quiz that way as well. So yeah, yep, appreciate your understanding.
Thanks so much. Any other questions about training, cleanup, other system settings? All right, well, I really appreciate your time. I'm gonna stop the recording now and hang on for anyone that wants to review the APR or the caper. Happy to look at that and let you know what the highlights are for that report. Thanks so much for joining us again, and we'll talk to you soon.